Kia ora te whānau. Welcome back to another interview talking about the situation in Palestine, Gaza, Israel. I'd like to, in a moment, introduce my wonderful guests who have given their time to help us explore this issue. We have our very own Cole, who is from Aotearoa, from Christchurch, done numerous things with Anglican youth for a long time. But we have also with us Dr. Lamar, who is a phenomenal scholar and Palestinian Christian. And I'm going to ask you, Dr. Lamar, tell us about yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us a bit about your history. Where are you, etc.
Yeah, so my name is Lama Mansour. I'm from Nazareth. I was born and grew up here for most of my life. Um, and I'm a Palestinian citizen of Israel, meaning that in 1948, when Israel was established, my grandparents on both sides managed to remain within Israel, within the borders of what became Israel, and received its citizenship. So I'm both a Palestinian, but I also have an Israeli citizenship. Um, and yeah, I'm a social scientist by training. So I started my way in psychology and then moved into sociology, and that's what I do. I teach, and I'll be starting, I'm a researcher mainly. I'll be starting my postdoc in Jerusalem next year. So just really researching Israel Palestine generally, but specifically focusing on youth, young people, and how it is to grow up in this place.
Wow. Lots I want to ask more about. I think let me just unpack a few things then. So I don't think many of us understand when you make the distinction of a Palestinian Israeli citizen or whatever the language you could you aren't all Palestinians citizens? What are the Palestinians if not all citizens? How does that work? Could you kind of take us through that a bit?
Yes, so across the area between the Jordanian River and the Mediterranean Sea, all of Israel, Palestine, Palestinians are fragmented or divided into different groups, and each one of those groups has certain privileges and rights and limitations according to the legal structure that they are under or the legal status that they have. So, kind of the most stark of them would be Gaza, where under the rule of Hamas, supposedly under the Palestinian Authority, but kind of broke broke away in a sense, and then the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. So, in the eyes of Israel, those Palestinians do not have any status within Israel. But then if you move into kind of the borders of Israel, such as, places such as Nazareth, Haifa, Cana of Galilee, we remember from the Bible, and all of these places before 1948, there were Palestinians, and a lot of them were, driven out during the war, but a lot of them were not. A lot of them managed to stay. And that's Nazareth, for example, is one of the most preserved cities that wasn't so impacted by the war in 1948. So my grandparents all managed to remain and then received Israeli citizenship in 1948. And were immediately put under military rule. So if anyone's been in the West Bank, it was similar to that. They couldn't move between cities. They had a military ruler ruling over them. So all of the Palestinians who remained in Israel after 1948 and didn't leave their homes or left their homes but settled elsewhere in what became Israel were able to receive the citizenship and were put under this military rule for about 20 years, and then kind of became more normal citizens. And so today we're about 21% of the population. We're about 2 million people. You'll hear us in the media being referred to as Arab Israelis. That is the way that Israel prefers to refer to us. Most people would add some Palestinian component to that. We are Palestinian. My first language is Arabic. My traditions, my heritage is Palestinian. But we do have this privilege over my friends in the West Bank who are Palestinian, I have an Israeli passport. I'm able to travel through Ben Gurion Airport. I'm able to travel more freely. Inside the West Bank, outside, my friends in the West Bank can't come to visit me without a permit. And this is all part of this fragmentation strategy. All of these Palestinians to divide them into different groups, give this group certain privileges, other group, other privileges, and that way you can divide and rule
Oh,
if
so
you
kind
want.
of playing off one group potentially's rights over another group.
Exactly. So Arab Israelis, you're not Palestinian, you're Arab. You're not necessarily connected to the people in the West Bank. You're a special group that is still discriminated under Israeli rule, but at least you're better off than the people in the West Bank or in Gaza.
Can I ask you a
So yeah,
question?
that's kind of.
You grew up in Nazareth, and I'm really interested. We only all get one childhood, and so my childhood was obviously very different than your childhood. What was your childhood like being a Palestinian Christian in the context that you find yourself? I mean, yeah, I mean, how did that impact your childhood?
Yeah, I think as you grow up, and my parents were good at that, you don't notice the systemic discrimination, I guess, the systematic discrimination. Um, and I grew up in many ways like any other person. And because Nazareth is all Palestinian, I kind of was not, and it's so segregated from, other places. I didn't feel anything different, I guess, in many ways. But in others, it was very different. Regularly there would be war. All of a sudden, like, oh, there's war now, and things have to change. We would have sirens, we would have, different things. I especially remember the war with Lebanon because it was pretty formative for me. And some people were killed in Nazareth during that time. But yeah, as I said, like as you grow up, you don't notice the systematic discrimination. And I guess growing up in Nazareth, we also had a lot of foreign groups come because of its kind of religious, historical significance. A lot of people come to visit Nazareth. And we always had to explain to the people who were coming that we're not Jewish, that, we're not, we're this different thing. And sometimes you can see people kind of being disappointed that they got the second best thing. And so there was always this need to explain who you are, to explain that you're this really small minority, like as a Palestinian Christian. First of all, in Israel, you're not Jewish, you're Palestinian, so you're a minority there. And then also among Arabs or Palestinians, you're not Muslim, you're Christian. And then even for me, even among Christians, I grew up evangelical, so even within that, so it's a minority within a minority within a minority. It's a very small group, and you always have to explain. But over time, as I kind of grew up and traveled more outside my town and around the world, I began to understand kind of the deep-seated inequalities. The education system. Why do we have an underfunded school, overcrowded classrooms? Why, don't I get to learn about my own history? Why do I have to learn about, history that's not my own and in a narrative that's
By
not
your own, you're
my
meaning Palestinian history as opposed to you'd have to learn Jewish history. Got it.
Jewish history, or we would learn a kind of Islamic history, really old Islamic history, like not even modern. And it's part of the system that, you know, that doesn't reflect your own heritage, I guess. The streets were always, under just the life quality is always, and you don't notice it when you don't know anything else. The access to green spaces, public transportation. So, for example, none of the Arab Palestinian cities in Israel are connected to the railway. We don't, like, none of them. You have to go to the nearby Jewish town in order to go to use the train. Although, like, Nazareth is one of the biggest cities. And no new Arab Palestinian cities have been built since 1948. So you can imagine how much the population has grown, but it's all kind of confined into these small enclaves. And so yeah, you start to notice all of these things once I left Nazareth and started to see how other people live without this inequality, with access to green spaces, with access to public transportation, with an education system that reflects their values, that we can, yeah.
Lama,
Great. Might
your
just
research is,
go, Cole.
oh, sorry, I was going to say your research is kind of in that field of the experience of Palestinians who grew up in kind of more like the Arab localities of Israel, and then in many ways some of the kind of first really deep and genuine encounters with Jewish Israelis is when they moved to higher education. Yeah, do you want to touch on some of your research in that space?
Yeah, yeah. So as I kind of explained it now, there's so much segregation. Like growing up, you don't really interact much with Jewish Israelis, especially if you live in a place like Nazareth where, there aren't any. And that's the case for much of the Palestinian citizens of Israel. We just don't interact with Jewish Israelis unless we're in a mall somewhere or if you go to the next town over. And even the education system is separated, is segregated. So the education system that I was in, the language of teaching was Arabic. But then once you move into higher education, then it's mixed. Then there's just one higher education system. And for many Palestinians, that's the first time where they have this long encounter with Jewish Israeli citizens. And, so that's the first place that people meet for a prolonged time. So in my research, I wanted to understand that, to understand, what happens there, what happens when someone leaves their home, because also there are no universities in Palestinian Arab cities. So you have to move from home. You're younger because you don't do the army, you don't do the military service. So you're 18 in a room full of people who are at least 21, 22. You're younger, you don't know the language. This is the first time that you're being taught in Hebrew. You are taught the Hebrew language, but you're not, taught math in Hebrew. You're not taught history in Hebrew. So this is the first time where you're in a fully Hebrew-speaking environment. And this, campus climate, that all of a sudden you realize that you're a minority. Like you not a lot of people speak like you. I'm in Haifa, at Haifa University, that sometimes boasts that there are 40% of the students are Palestinians. When I was there, none of my teachers were Palestinians. I was taught exclusively by Jewish Israelis. So it's this place where you really understand what your status is in society, and that changes something in you. And that's what I found in my research. This feeling that the campus is not ours. It's not. There's no belonging there. You may find belonging in your pockets with other Palestinians, but the kind of the separation remains really, really stark.